Welcome again to today's webinar. We're going to get started. Before we get started today, I want to go through over some webinar etiquettes. Everyone currently is on mute mode, and so to unmute yourself, you would need to press *7. We're going to see if we could hold that off to the end where there's a Q&A session so that we could avoid any background noise. There's also an opportunity to use the chat feature on the left-hand side of your screen, so feel free throughout the presentation to include, type in any questions or comments, and the presenter will be able to see that. Otherwise, we'll also enter any questions towards the end of the webinar. There's going to be an evaluation form, a link from SurveyMonkey that will be forwarded to everyone post this webinar, and we hope that everyone can please complete that so that we make sure we straighten ongoing webinars. The topic for today is public speaking. This is part of NLAAN's AIDS 2012 Brown Bag webinar series. And so for the past several months, starting back in November, we've been having a series of webinars around the International AIDS Conference. And now this one is going to be, as I mentioned, just focusing on public speaking. All these webinars are recorded and posted on nlaan.org/AIDS2012. And I'll be able to show you guys the website visually on your slide towards the end of this presentation. But without further ado, I do want to go quickly over the webinar overview. Richard Zaldivar from the UA Las Memorias will be sharing with us his expertise around public speaking, sharing your thoughts, spirit, and passion tools for public speaking. Following his presentation, we're going to go over some exciting activities that are happening around the International AIDS Conference. And so Richard Zaldivar, again, is Executive Director and founder of the UA Las Memorias Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting wellness and preventing illness among Latino populations affected by HIV/AIDS by using the inspiration of the AIDS Monument as a catalyst for social change. As Executive Director, he oversees programs that reach out to Latino populations in the Los Angeles area, including men who are gay, bisexual, and men who have sex with men, communities of faith, and the general public. The UA Las Memorias Project is noted for several highly visible endeavors, including the construction of the nation's first publicly funded AIDS monument in the United States, hosting the Strike Out AIDS, the first ever AIDS Awareness Day at Dodger Stadium, and leadership in the fight against crystal meth use. With that, I want to invite Richard Zaldivar to please unmute yourself. Press *7.
Thank you so much, Francisco. It's really a pleasure to be here, and good morning and good news to each and every one of you, wherever you are at. This is really an incredible day on this 10th day of May, the day following the announcement of President Obama's support for gay same-sex marriage. That being said, we also have another great moment in history coming up, and that is the first time ever with the International AIDS Conference coming to the United States. It's really, really an incredible opportunity for all of us to share in the month of July. And as we get started, I wanted to, and I'm having technical problems with the webinar, Francisco.
All right, I'll forward the slides for you.
Yeah, if you can go ahead and present them, I can, on the first slide, slide 2. Are we all on there?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I think that all of us, and I'm included, have had an opportunity in our life to, come up to the front of the room to speak out on an important issue. And because we're so scared, we're fearful of raising our hand, we're fearful of going in front of a group sometimes. And when we get the opportunity, we really may not be well organized, or nerves take over, I wanted to share with you when I was a young man, I know it's many years ago, I was a very shy and timid person, and I was fearful of always making a statement and not it being correct. And so instead of taking the chance and fighting the fear, I stayed quiet. But it wasn't until, probably 19 or 20 years old, where I became active in the community, and I saw things that weren't happening for our community, and I spoke up in local government, and I got the political bug and the community activist bug, and I started to get involved. And so it's been many years, but I learned back then that I had an equal voice and that what I have to share with people that usually many people want to hear. So if you are coming to the session and the greatest fear you may have in public speaking is fear, or is the feeling that you're not able to express yourself well, please join the club. It's probably the greatest fear that most people have in their lives. Whether you're a case manager at a small nonprofit in Missouri, or if you're a bank executive on Wall Street, people tend to have an incredible amount of fear. My background, since those quiet days, I worked in city government from 1974 to approximately 1990. And in 1993, I founded the Wall Las Memorias AIDS organization. Next slide. So this is going to be an introduction. I want everyone to know that as I am talking to you right now, that I'm used to talking, my public speaking is usually in public. It's not necessarily where I sit behind a computer and read some slides and talk to many of you out there that I'm not able to see your face, find out what your gesture, your body language looks like, read your eyes, see your eyes. That's all important part of public speaking. But in order for me to get on the phone today, I had to think about why you are here and to share our common passion on activism and prevention of HIV/AIDS and treatment and care for those who are still battling the disease. So I know that all of us have something in common. First of all, you need to develop transferable skills and self-confidence. You have to know that when you go to the podium or the head of the class, that you have the information that people want to hear. And if the other people in the audience may have that same kind of information, you need to know that only one person can communicate to the audience, and that is you. That's why it's so important when you go up to the room, you go in front of a class, that you have the self-confidence to go up and make your speech to the audience. I think it's also important that as you're walking up to the class that you kind of scan the room and you assess what kind of mode of communication may work for that room. We'll talk later about whether or not we have a microphone system or if we're using AV equipment, or if you're just speaking in front of the class or in front of a group with no sound system. You have to assess that before you start your speech. The types of speeches and type of speech techniques we're going to cover. Next slide, please. It's really important, and I'm sure many of you have been in the audience when someone comes up and starts a presentation, and you're sitting there and saying, this person really doesn't know what they're talking about. Or you may sit back and say, they have, some of this information is correct. The other ones, this guy or this woman is kind of fudging the information. It's really important when you go before an audience. Now, you got to understand, the audience has lots of experience in listening. They have lots of experience in watching. And they can tell what a great presentation is from a very good presentation. Or they can tell someone who's going up there that hasn't a clue about the subject that they're talking about. So you have to know your material. If you're going up before a group and you may not feel comfortable with the data that you're presenting, it's important to look at an angle. Like if you're presenting on HIV/AIDS in a small town in Louisiana, it's really important if you're talking about gay, bisexual men, if you're talking about immigrant, you're talking about transgender, but you may not feel very confident in talking about the immigrant community, and you may not have all of the information to present to the audience. It's really important that you make your presentation, but you hone in on those areas of expertise that you feel not only knowledgeable, but that expertise that will kind of enlighten your spirit, because people want to hear, first of all, when we're talking about HIV/AIDS or substance abuse, those are human issues, and they affect human lives. And so it's important not to come across as academia in talking about issues that are really confronting our community. It's important to research your topic as much as possible. There's lots of ways of researching information. Obviously, the number one is through the Internet. Many of us have files or copies of presentations that were provided before. So there should be no reason not to have the information at hand. And always have your spirit be free, so that during the conversation you may be able to talk about something very interesting that happened to you on the way to the presentation that may be funny, that you could share with the audience. It does two things. One, it kind of breaks up the monotony, and number two, it kind of makes the audience feel a little bit more comfortable, and it makes you feel a lot more comfortable. Next slide. When we're speaking, it's important that we rehearse our material. Know that if you're asked to do a presentation at the Kiwanis Club about hepatitis C or a certain medical therapy being provided to young people who are HIV positive, that it's important that you start to rehearse your pitch to the audience. You can rehearse it in front of someone. You could rehearse it by yourself in front of a mirror, but run it through. And then as you're rehearsing it, you also are free to make changes. The most important thing is not just speaking and rehearsing it aloud, but listen to yourself. And if you can convince yourself, if you feel like you are doing a great job, if you're educating yourself during that rehearsal, then maybe there's not a lot to tweak. It's always important, and you may hear my voice, to pause and breathe. It's important to take the time to share the information with the audience and not rush through it. It's always so easy to rush through presentations, and you probably hear that in my voice. But know that if you're given 30 minutes or 35 minutes, that you have to know when to slow down the presentation so you can get the audience attention, and two, when to speed it up before they cut you off. And always take the time to try to practice with a timer, and maybe get a friend, a colleague to help you with a stopwatch or just a watch. Or you kind of can, work in front of a mirror with a clock on the wall to be able to time your presentation to make sure that you're covering all the pertinent information that the audience wants to hear. Next slide. One of the things that I do when I go into a room is to sniff the room out, an environmental scan. Know who's in the audience when you come in, whether it's theater seating or whether it's banquet seating. Know who's in the audience. You may have an elected official. You may have a celebrity. You may have someone that you're really close to that you trust. Make sure that you talk to them and let them know that you're there and you're going to be speaking, so that when you're getting up in front of the podium or in front of the class, that you're able to make a connection, a real warm human connection, so that if your mind starts to wander and you get overwhelmed, always bring it back to that friendly face and talk to them about the issue you're presenting. It's important to always arrive early, particularly if there is an audio-video setup involved. Know who's going to be the technician during your presentation. Many times you may have to do that, and you may have to be speaking and presenting and using a pointer or the computer. Know that it's got to be set up and do a test run. It's also very important to know that if something is not working, that you have all the information in front of you and that you can continue your presentation while someone may be able to work on the technicalities of the AV equipment. But always be aware. It's also important when you're presenting to know that your information that you're providing will always get back to someone from the media or someone from a federal agency or a researcher that you may be quoting information. So know that many times when you're speaking in public that the information that you're providing can be used in a public setting, particularly in the area of media. Next slide. Again, this comes back to know your audience. If you have coming to talk about immigrants and HIV, it's really important to walk in there early or know ahead of time, are the majority of the people in the audience women? If it is, then you need to prepare your pitch to making sure that you have information about Latinas and AIDS, and not come in from a MSM or a gay bisexual standpoint, male standpoint. You've got to know your audience. You've got to know where they come from. Do they come from schools? Do they come from community? Are they from churches? Are they gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community? Really, really important so that you know how to speak to your audience. Greet them. Make sure that you make eye contact. I have seen many speakers come before us in conferences that their eyes will roam throughout the room, and they're looking to see if staff is passing out information. They're looking to see if a government official's in the room. They're very busy looking out into the room without even focusing on the audience. That's a huge no-no. You need to zoom in on your audience. If you can get in front of them and in your opening remarks create that relationship, give them your attention, look at them in their eyes as you're speaking on the various parts of your presentation, and create that eye contact, you will not lose them until you say, thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here today. It's really important. Eye contact is extremely important. And always at the end of the sessions, know that you may have an opportunity for Q&A. Be prepared for the potential questions. And if you don't have the answer to the questions, don't be honest with the listener and provide them the information that you know, or you may want to get back to them or refer them to where the answers that they're looking for can be found. Next slide. One thing about public speaking, you got to relax. You got to have a great time in presentation. Public speaking is really no different than speaking to your friend about your comadre or about the problems at work. It's just a little bit better organized in public speaking. You got to also think of the audience as being really your friends. They want to be there. That's why they're sitting there. They're listening to you. They're giving all of their attention to you. So start by addressing them, thanking them for having you be there. hoping that, this will be a good session and that you'll be able to provide some important information. Feel free, feel very free to be emotional in your presentation and taking a moment to think your thoughts out, because all you do by doing that is you humanize the presentation. So smile, laugh if there's something that you need to share about. What I always do is when I'm talking before an audience is I kind of gauge their mood. And if I see that they're kind of tired or if they're kind of disconnected, I will do something to try to connect them to me. If I don't do that, then I'm missing the boat. I'm kind of like in speaking also as a facilitator. I'm also sometimes a therapist. Sometimes I could be comical. And you have to do that because many people in the audience that are sitting there have a lot of things going on in their life. And although they want to listen to your presentation, they may not give you all the attention that they could possibly give. So it's really important to use different ways or mechanisms to ignite their attention. And always, always know that being nervous in front of a crowd is very, very natural. But learn to transfer that nervous energy into excitement, enthusiasm. And what I do often is I really translate in that to passion. I can go before an audience and I will present on the subject of HIV/AIDS or substance abuse, but somewhere towards the end of the presentation, I talk about a personal issue, my best friend who died of AIDS, and all the stuff that he went through in his life, all the stigma and rejection that he went through. And I get emotional, and I cry. And I do it only because it's real. And I know people don't like many times sharing their emotions, but we're talking about HIV/AIDS. We're not talking about a vitamin product. And I got to be honest, I think sometimes when I go to conferences, I hear presentations, many times from researchers and upper management, and I hear presentations that make HIV/AIDS into such a business. Our job is to continue to humanize our cause. And so feel free to be human, be light, and be real. Next slide. So some of the ways to address the stage fright is always, it's easy when we get fearful or anxious, we lower our voice. And when we lower our voice, no one hears us and no one gives us the response that many times we're looking for in an audience. Raise your voice, so making sure that you're projecting to the entire audience. Now, the entire audience could be 300 people in a conference hall, or it could be 30 people in a small room. You need, as you walk into that room and you start to gauge and analyze the setting, to know how loud your voice has to be. So visualize yourself also giving the speech when you're up there. Know that if you need a glass of water next to you because your mouth may get dry, have that glass of water, take a sip through it, and be part of the larger audience. I think it's extremely important. Visualize that the audience at the end of your presentation is going to clap. They may give you a standing ovation. And they may come up to you afterwards and says, Tomas, this was a really great educational presentation. By the way, where else can I get a copy of your presentation, or can you also present at this other organization? Visualize that, because that will happen. But you got to take your time, breathe, eye contact, and know that you're just like them. You've just been called upon to speak. Next. When we're at the podium, know that the audience there is there to learn. And once they've accepted you and they're sitting in their seats, they really want you to do a great job. One is because they're there to get information that you're sharing. They want your interpretation of the information you're sharing. But most important of all, they want you to succeed. You know, as I sit in the audience many times and I see a presenter kind of struggling, I sit there saying, well, maybe he's going to go back and talk about this issue so that he brings this whole conversation to light and he ties all the thoughts together. And I do that because if he succeeds, then I succeed. And I know sometimes it's very difficult being up there, not having your presentation ready. And you sometimes, can feel, like a fool. So it's important to know that people in the audience always want you to succeed. They also want you to be relaxed. They want you to be interesting. And they want you to be stimulating. Again, I've heard many speakers speak, and they are really, really boring. Now, through an hour-and-a-half presentation at a conference, and many of you may experience this at the International AIDS Conference, you have some great presenters. Well, they're not great presenters. They may be great researchers, great doctors, people who have the information that you want to hear. But 10 minutes into the presentation, you start to fall asleep, or your attention starts to wander, or you say, I need another cup of coffee. And then you go to your comadre and say, let's go get a cup of coffee. And you may come back 30 minutes later. It's really important that you need to be interesting to the audience, and you need to connect to their spirit. Again, this is not about selling life insurance. This is about humanity. So touch their soul. Next slide. You get up, you drop a pen, you show some nervousness in your voice. The microphone may go off because it's a wireless microphone and the battery's low. That's all real. And so don't ever apologize for something going off, or if you feel that you're nervous. Just go on and know that you're a human person like everybody else in that room, and that we all sometimes get nervous. Always stay calm. Always stay calm. And when you're feeling like you're rushing through a presentation, when you feel like your voice is kind of quivering because you're a little nervous, take a deep breath, slow down, and go back to the script, go back to your outline to continue your presentation. Next slide. Always concentrate on your message. Always concentrate on your message. And if your message is going to be about HIV prevention, what about HIV prevention? I like to, when I leave the room, and I know that I did my job, is when I give the information that I need to give. But at the end, towards the end, I leave them and I challenge the audience. They want to be challenged. They want to sit there and say, I like Richard. He really left me feeling good about myself. You've got to remember, many of these people are listening to 5 speakers, maybe in a conference day. What is going to what's going to make you stand out above everybody else? It's not always the content, but it's the message, the underlying message. I like to challenge my audience. I like them to know that they can make a change in HIV/AIDS, that they don't have to depend on the government or depend on their boss or depend on different behavioral health models, but that they themselves can make a difference. And then again, that focuses your attention from your own anxieties and focuses more in challenging their spirit. Next slide. You always, in gaining your experience, it's really important that you have to present your speech in a way where using your experience in public speaking or raising your hand. You know, I need to tell you that when you're in the audience, and many of you I'm sure have done this, There are people who raise their hands to the presenter, and many times those people who ask the questions are so good in asking questions, and you say to yourself, did they go to school just to learn how to ask questions? Because they're very concise, they're loud, and they put their emotion behind the question. Then you have others who will raise their hands, and they will not only ask a question, but they'll give you a little bit part of their history, of their family. And, you know, that you kind of lose the audience there, and they say, oh, this person's going to whine. It's really important that your speech is clearly presentable in the language that you need to address your audience. And it's important that there are opportunities out there for you to learn how to speak. This slide talks about the Toastmasters. In my life, I took 2 public speaking classes in a junior college, and I was in a debate team for the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce. That's the only experience I had, but it's always been the passion that's moved me to be able to express myself. So always find what moves you in that presentation. Next slide. There are 4 basic types of speeches, okay? And it's really important that you learn which speech you're going to be given to the audience. And sometimes the speeches could be a combination, but not necessarily. The first one's informative. You're there to provide interesting and useful information to your audience. You're there talking about HIV 101. You're kind of instructing, you're telling them this is what about HIV AIDS, this is how you get it, blah, 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 blah. That's informative. And the next one is demonstrative, where you show it's very similar to informative, but going back to the AIDS presentation, if you're talking about using a condom on a person, the chances, the risks, how to use a condom, this would be a speech of demonstration. So you're actually telling people, showing them how to do X, Y, and Z. A persuasive speech is one I like, and I've been, because of my political experience, I use this quite often. And that is, even in an educational title or theme, you could be very persuasive, where you convince people to change in some way. You get them to think. You get them to challenge. You recruit them as volunteers. You share information with them, and you direct them to go to a website to learn more about X, Y, and Z. So persuasive is really, really a great tool for me. And then the last type of speech is the entertainment. You receive an award at the banquet. You get up, you give your thank you, and then after, as you start to close, you may tell them how awesome it was there to be there. Thank you for the award. And by the way, this is what happened on the way to the dinner house or the conference hall. The speech is usually a very light speech, and you can have fun with it and feel very comfortable. Next slide. Now, there are 4 other ways that we can prepare for a speech and deliver that speech. One is through memorizing our speech. Now, I got to tell you that memorizing speech is not an easy thing, and I don't strongly recommend this for many people. But in order to do one, you should always write out the outline, read the speech out loud or to yourself. You may want to record it if possible. In memorizing, you always got to remember the keywords. So if you have a 10-minute presentation, and if you're going to, or let's not go to 10 minutes, let's say 5-minute speech, and you're going to memorize that, know that somewhere along the lines that you may forget part of the line. So go back to those keywords of those paragraphs. So the first paragraph could be prevention. The second paragraph could be useful tips. The third paragraph could be about HIV testing. The fourth paragraph, X, Y, and Z. So that is memorizing a speech. The next slide. The other one is a written speech, a prepared speech. This is somewhat, you see this many times in politics. The president will read a speech. He reads it from a teleprompter, but he also does impromptu. A lot of your elected officials will read from a speech. A lot of your presenters will read from their speech. I've done this sometimes, a few times in my life, and it's great. It prepares me to present in impromptu fashion many times or extemporaneously. But always write out your speech in large print, double or triple space it. I also always would highlight areas that you want to emphasize or areas that you don't want to forget. If there's a certain terminology or phrase, highlight it. And always in the speech, you need to practice it constantly so that you know in front of a mirror, in front of friends, in front of a video camera. But practice is extremely important. Next. This is my favorite type of speech. I love to speak. I love to motivate. I love to educate. I love to challenge the audience. And nothing is for me is better than speaking extemporaneously. And how I speak is I always identify the information that I'm trying to relate to the audience. I kind of create an outline, a very basic outline with keywords, and I run it through my head constantly. And it's really awesome because speaking extemporaneously, you are able to, if you've heard a presenter right before you and they may have mentioned something that you want to zone in on, you could bring that back into your presentation without losing the thrust of the impact of your presentation, of your speech. So it's important to know that you could do that. The downside to speaking extemporaneously is hard to really time your presentation. So know that as you're planning it out, as you're writing your outline or you're speaking verbatim, know that there's a time limitation and you may be within it. Next slide. The other type of speech I also enjoy very much is impromptu. This is where you may have no idea that you've been called up to speak. I was asked to do this 2 weeks ago for someone running for the state assembly, a friend, and at the last minute they just called me. And what I was able to do is use my knowledge about this candidate, but more important of all, use my passion, my anger, in talking about how the political system is great, but many times the people elected to office are incompetent or lack the leadership skills. And so I felt very comfortable with that section. And I was able to inspire the audience because that's the way I truly believe. And I feel my passion to that. So impromptu gives you an opportunity to really hone in on your message or your presentation without planning and without writing an outline. And that comes with time. Next slide. It's really, really important that we as presenters, as speakers, that we face our fear of speaking. I have to tell you that I think it's public speaking is the most important thing that to all of us in our community, because we're teachers, we're educators, we're constantly working with the community. And if you can conquer your fear and if you can become good at it, then you will be providing many presentations or you'll be asked to speak. I think it's important that when we look at public speaking, that we don't look at it as a hobby. Public speaking takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of study. It's an art and it's a skill. And arts and skills take a lot of practice. So anybody could be a very outstanding public speaker if they study and if they're open to providing great presentations. One person was offended when he contracted HIV/AIDS. And I remember him, my friend David Reese, and I made a decision to spend most of my life on AIDS work, and we built the country's only publicly funded AIDS monuments. But I had to speak out, and I had to do a lot of speeches in my community, and I had to tailor them to parents, to labor, to business, to entertainers. I had to have a way to do that, but it was my passion that drove the message. And so in each and every one of you, find the passion that can drive your presentation or your speech, and you will be an awesome speaker. And in my last slide, if anybody has any questions or would like to contact me, there's my information. I'll be happy to communicate with you at any time. Now for questions.
Great. Thank you, Richard. We had a great presentation. We have some questions in the chat feature that I'll take a stab at throwing them out and answering them, and there's a couple that are for you, Richard. But again, just to remind folks as I do that, please *7 to unmute yourself. If you have any question, also feel free to use the chat feature. And we have a couple questions on the chat feature. This webinar will be recorded, is being recorded actually, and will be posted on our website, nlan.org/AIDS2012. And we'll also be sending the PowerPoint presentation to everybody after completing the evaluation for the webinar. So that's the little hook to get everyone to complete the webinar evaluation. There's a question, Richard, for you around a gentleman, actually a young lady mentioned, I'm always self-conscious about my foreign accent. Any recommendations?
I think, what is her name?
Alejandra.
Alejandra, I wouldn't ever, I have to be honest, sometimes if I'm in the South, or if I'm in New York, I'm kind of conscious of my lack of accent. Some of you may think I have an accent too, but the reality, it's okay. I think that you have an accent. Know of it as being very unique and very sexy. Don't ever hide your accent. That is very appealing to other people, and it makes you stand out.
Great. We have another question on the chat. Anyone have any questions? We'll hold those for a second. Anyone want to ask a question? *7 to unmute yourself. All right. I have another question from Marcelo. I have never been to an AIDS conference before, but as a participant of AIDS 2012, when should I make a public speech?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think that when I've been to one international AIDS conference. I was in Mexico City, and I think that you have an opportunity in many of the meetings that you may be attending. There's going to be a lot of meetings on from the Latino, like a Latino caucus, that you'll be able to get up and talk about a little bit about your programs and what you think prevention should look like in your community, at your target population. You could always ask many questions, and I think that it's important that if people are facing their fear and anxieties in public speaking, that they start practicing on their public questions and see which is the best question that you could provide to a speaker or presenter. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And I think also when we think of public speaking, it doesn't have to be in front of hundreds of people. Public speaking could be in front of 5 people. Mm-hmm. So there's always opportunities to do that. Any questions on verbal questions? I have a couple in the chat. *7 to unmute.
Hello?
Yes.
This is Humberto Arango. Very much. First of all, I want to congratulate you. I think it's been a great presentation. I totally agree with the presenter on what he recommended for the lady with the foreign accent. I have a foreign accent myself. And I wanted to add that a friend of mine long ago told me, I don't want to lose my accent. I want people to know that I had to learn to speak English well. So I think that you shouldn't worry about the accent. You should worry about speaking the language well. But then the accent is no problem at all.
Right.
Thank you, Humberto.
Very good, Humberto.
Another question. We have two questions. One of them is directly to you, I think, Richard. Will you be presenting at the International Conference? And the second question is, what is the most important characteristic of a passionate speaker?
Wow.
Passion.
That's an awesome, fully loaded question. No, I will not be speaking at the AIDS conference. I think the most important characteristic of a passionate speaker is to really own your passion and your love for the topic, and to own it. I mean, really, really, not just talk about it, but really feel, because the audience will pick that up, and the way you express yourself when you're feeling that issue, that pain, or the need for education, will really, really work with the audience and carry your message much further. So that would be my recommendation.
Great. We have another question from Jasmine. When you identify persons in the audience of high caliber, maybe someone that you've admired in the past, how do you remain collected under the added pressure to sound competent?
Well, I think that's another great question. Well, if you see someone out there that could be maybe intimidating, I think it's really important to find another face to zoom on, to see your friends or people that you connected with, and to know, first of all, when you walk in a room and you see a head of a department or you see somebody, an elected official or an entertainer, we always give them immediately, we perceive them as to be really, really smart and have all the information on the subject we're talking about. Well, they can be smart, but they may not have the information that you have in your head. Second of all, it's how you deliver that message to them which is really going to get their attention. These people would deal with other people and high-caliber people all the time. And it's really important that you understand that you're also high-caliber too, because you're speaking to them. So never come from a place of you always got to walk into the room and present a speech from a place of power, because you have the most powerful place in that room for the time that you're speaking. And so you need to have confidence, feel comfortable, and address the audience like and he or she's just like anybody else.
Great, thank you. Any last-minute questions? We have a few minutes left.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So just going back to engaging a difficult audiences. So, like, for instance, I work with teens, and a lot of the times they're mandated teens, and they don't really want to be at those presentations. So what are some of, in addition to try to engage the audience by, catching up on their cues and stuff, like what are some other tips that you might have for that?
That's happened to me many times, and basically you kind of you challenge them. And you challenge them in a really nice way, and where you bring your message down to them and make them part of that solution. You directly ask them, and I do that many times in presentations. I'll walk into a room, even if among clergy, we do a lot of work with faith-based, and I'll ask the clergy, and I did a few weeks ago, I asked them, how many of you members of clergy lost someone to AIDS? And then they raise their hand, and I let them say, okay, well, who was this person, right? And so by using a technique like that, you kind of warm them up to you. Okay. They may be there. They may be in their own world. They may be cackling. They may be talking or feel like this subject is not targeted to them, but you challenge them, and you think of ways that you challenge them on a very friendly and respectful basis, because your job is to get them involved with you. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Richard, we have another question from Edgar. Sometimes you speak about HIV and STDs. You always have people that react to your presentation negatively with their body language. What is the trick to block them out and not let them get to you?
What's the trick to well, I like the challenge. I think that the job is, what I've done many times when I see people and their body language close up to me, again, I'll go up and I'll challenge them or challenge people next to them. So that in the same situation I just explained, I will talk to them about someone who, I ask them if they've ever had an STD. Or I'll walk into a room. I'll give you an example. I walked in Loyola Marymount and addressed the MECHA, and there must have been 85 people there. And I asked the entire room as I started the conversation with AIDS, and then I asked about sexuality. And I asked them, how many of you are gay? How many of you are bisexual? How many of you are lesbian? How many of you are heterosexual? And I saw the hands, and it must have been 98 to 2, right? And I told them, I said, well, some of you are not being honest with me, and that's okay, because there's a lot more gay and bisexuals in this room. And so, but nevertheless, let's move on. And so immediately what I did with that was I disarmed them and let them know that we're really connected, even though you don't think we are. So I like using, techniques like that really challenge them. You just always have to be respectful and know your what your reach is as a presenter.
Thanks, Richard. We have another question from Fernando. We have some good questions coming through. I'm beginning to overcome my fear of public speaking, but sometimes my voice still quivers. Other than taking a few deep breaths, is there something else that I could do to help prevent that?
Besides taking a few deep breaths, I would make sure that you're drinking water. So sometimes drinking the water will also take your attention away from your quivering. And when my voice quivers, I need to speak louder. So always speak louder. And there's something about speaking louder. It takes your mind off the anxiousness and the fear, and it gives you more oxygen to your brain because you're using more oxygen to be able to speak louder, a lot more energy. And your emotions tend to be connected to a louder voice. And then you'll start to normalize your conversation or your presentation. So speak louder.
Thanks. Any other questions? So we have a question from Candace. I have a soft voice. What are some techniques to help with that?
I have a soft voice. Number one, it's important that if you're speaking and you have a soft voice and you're going to do a presentation, always try to ask them for a microphone system, a mic system. And if there's no mic system, take your time in the presentation, articulate the key words that you want to articulate. Always try working at raising your voice. But articulation of main points that drive their emotion and their attention is really important because you don't want your voice to just be monotone. And I think that happens whether if you have a soft voice or a louder voice. You always have to articulate the key words that you want to get across.
Thanks. And I would also add, Richard, maybe positioning yourself if it's in the room where you want to, maybe you want to be in the middle, walk around, get closer to people.
Exactly.
And so, besides obviously articulating, getting closer to the audience sometimes helps as well. If you're not, if you don't have to use the podium, get in front of the podium.
And many times, that's true, Francisco, many times, going back to the earlier question, when you want to kind of disarm someone's, whether it's negativity or the fact that these teens are closed up, right, that's also another technique to use is to move around and walk up in front of them. And, as you're challenging the audience, the entire class or the group of people, you're right in front of them. And you're kind of like the school teacher or the father that they maybe never had or they do have that can keep an eye on them.
Great. Any other questions? Star 7 to unmute as we wrap this up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Elizabeth. First, I want to commend you because you guys have done an amazing job with the presentation, answering the questions. The answers have all been wonderful. You have maintained the tone that I feel maybe I should model if need be I do a presentation. But I have a question. Will the survey determine whether we will be speaking or what kind of speeches we will be making?
So yes, Elizabeth, so you're asking if the survey following this webinar, if it's going to ask you regarding particular speeches?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Will it determine whether we ourselves will be selected for certain specific kind of speeches due to the answers of the survey?
No, not at all. The survey is anonymous.
Okay. No, I was just wondering if one tied into the other, because I'm the kind of person that, is just, wow, just spontaneous and
right.
Just amazing. This has really been a blessing, and you guys are wonderful. You could sell the Brooklyn Bridge.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we're going to wrap up with this webinar, and again, everyone, we're going to send you guys a link to the webinar evaluation. That's simply for us to kind of make sure that we're strengthening what we did good, where we could improve, and so we wanted to. That's the purpose of the webinar. But if you could give me, I know we're over time. If you give me 3 more minutes, and I wanted to share with you some activities that are going to be happening for those of you who will be in the International AIDS Conference in July. We've developed a website where all these webinars are being posted. Again, we've started webinars since back in November, so you can see all this series of webinars that will be available on this website. It's NLAAN, NLAAN.org/AIDS 2012, and I have a link to it, and you can see it right now in the next slide. But this is kind of the content that's on the webinar. It just is a visual for the screenshot. Our next webinar is looking at media. This one is actually going to be extended for a half hour. So this webinar is going to be an hour and a half. We are partnering with a PR firm who's going to talk about how to put together press releases, op-eds, so looking at traditional media and working with the traditional media, so newspapers, radio, television. And then we're also going to be working with AIDS.gov, who's going to present on how using social media. And so this next webinar is media all-inclusive. And then the following one in July, we'll be looking at all the activities that are happening at International AIDS Conference, as well as we're going to be relaunching a roadmap that are going to be for Latino-specific activities and events, so that everyone can have that. We'll be having that available electronically as well as distributing it during the conference. And as I mentioned before, that's the website, nlan.org/AIDS 2012. There's a pre-conference that is being organized, and affiliated event has several names, and the title for this is Latino Hispanic HIV Research. It's taking place Sunday, July 22nd at the Renaissance Hotel. There will be an RSVP process. We're expecting about 300 individuals, so it is on a first-come, first-served basis. We'll be opening up the RSVP registration for this affiliated event in the coming weeks, so please look out. If, again, go to that website for more information, just so that everyone knows. These are kind of the objectives of the affiliated event. It's really to kind of coalesce around the various activities that are happening around the country. This will be a U.S.-focused affiliated event, but we will be having folks from Latin America and the Caribbean, given the nature of the conference, participating in this pre-conference. So for more information and for updates and for registration links, please go to nlan.org/AIDS 2012. Also, as many of you may have received, we are doing some great activities, gearing up to do some networking zone during the Global Village during the conference. So we'll have a series of activities Monday through Friday, and it's brought to you by the Latino Caribbean Diaspora Collaborative. And so this is a diverse group of folks from the U.S., U.S.-based Latinos, as well as individuals in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so all these are working together to put together a series of activities that are going to engage folks in kind of oral presentations and poster presentations, social media, culture. And so there's going to be a series of activities. This space is going to be really nice, and it's going to really showcase the diversity in our community. So make sure, if you are in the International AIDS Conference, to check out this area. It will be free, and so unlike the actual conference, the Global Village is open to the public and it is free. Right now, we have a call. If you are going to be at the International AIDS Conference, there's a call for information if you want to present during that space. feel free to email directly Robert or Soraya, whose emails are in front of you on your webinar. Again, you'll be getting these slide sets to keep these emails. But if you're interested in presenting something, again, the presentations are going to be short and sweet, about 30 minutes or less. But if you want to make sure you kind of participate and get involved in this process, contact the 2 U.S. members of the LCDC.
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
The conference has been muted.
The next one I wanted to share was the reception that is taking place and being organized. It's called Nuestra Noche de Acción. It will be a reception that we're organizing for folks, and it's going to be on Tuesday, July 24th from 7 to 9. It's going to be at Cuba Libre, which is a few blocks from the convention center. Also, as many of you have seen, probably there's going to be a Latino stakeholder call. The Black AIDS Institute is organizing a series of stakeholder calls. As you may know, Phil Wilson, who's the president and CEO of Black AIDS Institute, will be addressing the delegation of the conference delegation around the U.S. epidemic, and they want to get Latino input, and so they're organized a call, which is going to take place Tuesday, May 15th, from 4 to 5. To register, make sure you go to that link, or if you have any questions, email directly AIDS2012@blackaids.org. Also, there's a series of Road to AIDS 2012 meetings taking place around the country. For more information, check out roads-to-AIDS2012.org. The next cities that are taking place will be in Philadelphia, Dallas, Atlanta, Baltimore, and San Juan. And so for more information, go to Road to AIDS 2012. And in these meetings, the purpose is to talk about the National HIV Strategy, talk about the International AIDS Conference, and to talk about the Affordable Care Act and health reform and what that means for HIV organizations. So all these meetings have been going on for the several months, and these are the last 5 that are remaining. So if you're in these cities, go to that website and make sure you're present. And thank you again for sticking through this. We had 10 minutes over time. Again, please make sure to complete the evaluations, and we'll make sure you get the copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Have a great time.
Thank you. Please stand by.